Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The Supreme Court has overruled its 1967 judgment which considered Aligarh Muslim University as not a minority institution. The Supreme Court gave 4 different judgments on the matter, which the majority being led by Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. The Chief Justice of India led judgment observed that the rights granted by Article 30 are not absolute and a religious community may establish an institution but not necessarily administer it. The 1967 judgment, on the other hand, held that Aligarh Muslim University was not established or administered by Muslim minority but came into existence through an act of central legislature, the Aligarh Muslim University Act of 1920. It is important to note that AMU was originally founded as Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875 by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan for the goal of pushing a modern educational concept for the Muslim community. Now, a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court will determine if Aligarh Muslim University should be granted the minority status or not. Joining me on the telecast right now is former Lieutenant Governor Najib Jung. Thank you, sir, for joining me. And my first question, if you could help us understand why and how was the erstwhile Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College converted into Aligarh Muslim University in 1920 under the Act of Parliament?
Mika, it has a long history. It was in the late 19th century when Sir Syed realized that the Muslim community was backward educationally. They were resorting to teachings only in madrasas, and there was a need for modern education. So along with a few colleagues, albeit all of them Muslims, they thought that they'd create a university town on the image of Oxford and Cambridge. And so Sir Syed Ahmad traveled to Oxford and Cambridge and came back. The first step was the creation of a small college. That was the Anglo-Mohammedan College. And over time, they realized that one college is not enough, and therefore they needed a university. A group of, again, Muslims traveled around the country, contacted the Rajas, Maharajas, Zamindars, businessmen, including, by the way, Gandhiji, and decided that they would open a university, and that is how the university came into being. It got a minority tag because it was the Muslims who started it. It was the Muslims who were in the academic council. However, it's a misconception that admissions to the AMU are limited to Muslims, or it's in a vast majority of Muslims. The AMU is a pretty secular university over the years, with a large number of non-Muslims, particularly in engineering and medicine and architecture and so on. It's a great institution, and it is mostly residential along the lines of the European universities.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And also talking about your reaction, how did you react to the Supreme Court verdict today, which overruled the 1967 Supreme Court order that refused to give Aligarh Muslim University the status of a minority university?
Megha, I think today's judgment is an incomplete judgment. I don't want to use the words, it's a flawed judgment, but it's certainly an incomplete judgment. To set aside Aziz Basha's case, of course, that was a completely flawed judgment, and I'm glad that it has been set aside. It was an absurd judgment. However, today's judgment is incomplete in the sense that there have been detailed arguments on the history of AMU, on the 1951 legislation, on the 1967 judgment, then the 1981 changed by the UPA government. So there have been detailed arguments. So I don't see why the Supreme Court should, sort of offer a lollipop to the community and then say that you can't eat it. This has been pending for far too long. It was a 7 judges bench. I fail to understand how 3 judges will sit and decide what 7 judges could not.
Okay.
So there's no point in hiding behind law or constitution. The act is very clear. The constitution is very clear. Article 30 is very clear that minorities, whether it's linguistic or religious, can run their institutions. So the Supreme Court should have acted today in a positive manner and given succor and hope to the Muslim community, which actually feels quite beleaguered.
Okay. Right. You know, talking about implementation of 50% reservation for the Muslim minorities, this happened 3 decades later in 1950 in Aligarh Muslim University. Why was there a need, as per the administration, to provide quota, and why did they decide that it was after 3 decades that this quota is going to be provided?
Your voice is getting a little muddled. I'm not hearing very clearly, but I think you are asking why there are 50% reservations.
Why there are 50% reservation, and particularly why did it take 3 decades for the administration of the Aligarh Muslim University to then make a decision that yes, quota needs to be provided to the Muslim minorities in the university?
Well, I'll tell you, there is a concept of affirmative action for minorities and weaker sections. Now, this was debated ad nauseum by the Constituent Assembly, which decided that there will be Article 30 in the Constitution that will give minorities some relief. And under that, it is under that the AMU and the Jamia and such institutions provide reservations. So there is no debate on this. There are hundreds of colleges and universities in India that provide reservations for others. So giving reservations to Muslims or Christians in St. Stephen's College or Delhi University or Jamia or Aligarh, it makes no difference. In fact, it shows the large-heartedness of governments that we believe in affirmative action and we believe in hand-holding of minorities, whether it is the Sikhs, whether it is Christians or Muslims or Buddhists or whatever. It is a system that is prevalent in all mature democracies of the world, and affirmative action is an accepted concept.
Right. Okay. Let's go back in history and move forward from 1920 to 1950, and then the 1967 verdict came, but it was in 1981 where the Amendment Act of the Aligarh Muslim University, which was the Indira Gandhi government, it helped in restoring the minority status of the university by bringing about the Amendment Act. Now, how did this benefit the Muslim students?
No, the reason is very, very obvious. The Aziz Basha judgment was a flawed judgment. It destroyed the basic character of Aligarh Muslim University. That had to be set aside, and the government of the day understood that this is a gesture of affirmative action, that the university has been set up. You know, let me put you a very simple question. Walk on the streets of Aligarh and ask anybody, is AMU a minority institution or not? You will get the answer. Walk the streets of London and ask anybody, is AMU established by Muslims? Is it run by Muslims? Is it in the interest of Muslims? You will get your answer. And that is exactly what in 1981 the government of the day demonstrated.
Do you also think that all education institutions, whether they are run by minority communities, whether they are being provided financial support, whether they are deemed central universities by the government, should they be allowed to make their own decisions on how to implement quotas?
Look, Megha, this is the whole point of Article 30, that it allows minorities to set up their institutions and to run them. Now, it is absolutely a positive step by governments to fund them, because this is what is affirmative action, that you want to help weaker communities stand on their own feet, and this is exactly what is being done.
Do you also think that the 2006 Allahabad High Court judgment, which you spoke about, it did not grant minority status to Aligarh Muslim University? It ended up disregarding the Amendment Act of 1981. Was it wrong? And why has it taken it this long in 2024 for the verdict to be overruled?
Well, it has been proved wrong. The Supreme Court of India has held it is wrong. So who am I to comment on it? I am going a step further. I am saying that the Supreme Court should have gone a step further, that rather than just setting aside those orders, which are absurd orders to my mind, the Supreme Court should have clarified further and said, and set the question forever to bed, that these are universities that have been set up by minorities. They are in consonance with Article 30 of the Constitution, and therefore, whether it is Aligarh, whether it is the Jamia Millia Islamia, they should be considered minority institutions for good.
Talking about Jamia Millia Islamia, and again it was in 2011 where the minority university status was granted. Do you think the move came a little too late, and do you think there are other minority universities, Muslim minority universities, that should follow suit in being allowed to make their own decisions and set up their administration, rules and regulations in providing quotas?
No, this is extension of the same argument, Megha. If a institution has been set up by a community with the intention of furthering their educational interests, then of course they will continue to run it and they should be declared minority institutions. There is nothing wrong with that. Like I said, please understand the concept of affirmative action, that every responsible government in the world follows these principles. It's only a gesture to a weak minority. That is all.
Okay, my last question to you, speaking about affirmative action, how must the governments and educational institutions come together to make decisions about affirmative action? How much of the affirmative action needs to be given to the minorities and the underprivileged, and up until what time should it be carried forward? Can there be systems set up that you gauge the prosperity and development of a minority community, whether it's Christian or Muslims or any other community, and then decide amongst themselves that this is the right time to reduce that quota or this is the right time to further increase it?
No, that is a hypothetical question, I'm afraid. You can never come to a conclusion that when is it time to end quotas, when is it time to end affirmative action. There are countries in the world which do not need affirmative action because they are developed and well off. The time will come and the communities will themselves come forward. Right now, this is not the time to discuss that. Okay,
all right. On that note, thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor, for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views on the subject. Right now, I'm also being joined by Feroz Bakht Ahmed. He's a former Chancellor of MANUU. Feroz Bakht Ahmed, how do you react to the Supreme Court verdict that has come, which has overruled the 1967 Supreme Court order on disallowing the minority status to the Aligarh Muslim University?
Am I audible to you?
Yes, you're audible, but your frame is not right. You'll have to make your screen horizontal.
You see, I am not a techno-savvy person.
You just have to slide your phone into the horizontal position.
Yeah. Is it fine?
Yes.
All right. I'll take up your question, and before that, I also heard Mr. Chung, the former VC of Jamia Millia Islamia. I think he was bang on target, whatever he said. But my take on this aspect is slightly different. First thing is, I salute the decision of the Apex Court, number one. Number two, as far as the question of majority and minority is concerned, I am not in favor of this kind of an attitude for any community or any country, because these things, make a country weaker. This syndrome of majority and minority is not going to help India to become the leader of the world. Anyway, having said that, let me tell you one thing. It's good that Aziz Basha case has been struck down, and any or every university should give admission to the people who are meritorious, whether it is BHU, whether it is AMU, whether it is Jamia or any other university, right? The basic thing is that if a person is meritorious, if he is suitable as far as percentage levels are concerned, I mean, this majority minority should go. But one thing I agree with Mr. Jung when he said that if a group of people, whether you call it minority or whatever, if they deserve some special favor, I think there is no harm, because after all we are all Indians and we are trying to get something better for our nation only by getting admission to good universities, right? So and finally, let me just give me 2-3 seconds more. Finally, I would request that as this is a very sensitive issue, and that's why the Supreme Court has also sidelined a bit, I would say, sidelined it by sending it to another bench. Now, whatever decision will come by that bench, I believe that will be all in the favor of not only majority or minority, but that would be in the favor of the country, of the nation, that is India.
Okay. I have with me Advocate Naveen Chomal, who is a senior lawyer in the Supreme Court. Naveen Chomal, it's whether it is about the sentiments of the minorities in our country, or we talk about the majoritarian view and how they view the entire situation, it all boils down to the technicalities. It all boils down to the legal aspects of this case. And it has to be pointed out that it was in 1981 that there was an amendment to the Act of Parliament, the Aligarh Muslim University Amendment Act, that had been brought into the Constitution. And the question then arises is that in 2006, when the Allahabad High Court struck down the minority status of Aligarh Muslim University, it was wrong in doing so.
The technical aspect is the only thing that will have to be taken into consideration by the new bench. And I agree with Firoz Ahmed ji that the Supreme Court has now left it, thrown the ball in the court of a new set of 3 judges. But one thing that I would like to point out is that how can AMU claim the status of a minority institution? Because all the while they have been enjoying the grants from the central government. And when there is an aid from the central government, you cannot claim the status of a minority. Then you have to be governed by the central government's laws and rules pertaining to all other institutions.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but then there has been a special provision was made in 1981 Indira Gandhi government, and for that provision to be further amended or recalled or rolled back, there has to be an act that needs to be passed in the parliament. You are going to amend the constitution, and therefore this is the job of the lawmakers. The Supreme Court or any other court cannot intervene in this matter.
Fairly, very well taken, because the lawmakers have done the wrongs. Like in many other cases, whenever they wanted to appease the minority or rather a particular clergy section of the minority, they have been amending the laws and constitution as per their whims. We have seen it in the case of Shahbanur case also. We have seen it in the case of Waqf Board also. There have been, and then in the case of Religious Worship Act also we have seen. So they have been making all the laws. So I think this present government will have to take them head on, take the bull by the horn, and basically start changing the laws. They will have to show the muscles there, rather than leaving it to the judiciary.
Okay, Firoz Bakht Ahmed, coming back to you and talking about affirmative action and talking about how laws have been amended in the past to cater to the Muslim minority in the country. But I have to say, and I have to also point out, that there have been laws that have been amended several times, and every 5 years or even every 1 year, where the quota for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, Dalits, OBCs has been increased by 5% and 10% to the level that it has reached. So here if we're talking about appeasement, or are we talking about, I don't know, if you can take a look at these developments, these amendments, these changes, these quotas that are provided from 2 prisms, 2 points of view, whether it is affirmative action or it is appeasement that is taking place. And that's exactly where the politicians continue to clash and then are appeasing and wooing their vote banks. How do we ensure that this does not become inevitably a political issue?
Actually, Neha, really thank you for hitting the nail on the head. In fact, all these quotas, they have made India a divided house. That is a problem. Quotas, you see, I am not against any community, against any group, weaker group or backward group, right? However, they should all be held. If at all quotas are to be given, I feel that the general category has been left far behind. If at all quotas are to be given, there should be only two groups, the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots should get quotas from every kind, even if the person is a Brahmin or a higher caste. In fact, Muslims have no caste, but they have also got into a system of caste, seeing the traditions here, unfortunately. However, what I believe is each and every university should be inclusive and should give representation to all sections of society. So first thing is this: I am not in favor of any majority or
but which government, which political party will agree to this?
You see, this is what I feel. I wish that all these political parties, they just agree to what I believe. You see, this quota system has divided India into so many sections, not only into religious sections, into social sections, and unfortunately, this is eating into the entrails of India. It must stop. But anyway, since it is going on since the last 75-80 years, it is very difficult to take care of it. Nevertheless, efforts should be made. As the effort has been made in the Apex Court today, it should continue. And I believe the bench of the three judges, that will take a very genuine and very satiating decision, no matter what what the people think. But one thing is, there are some people have started thumping their chest that we have won. So there is no question of thumping the chest. They should thump the chest if this final bench of three judges actually gives the kind of a decision which is in favor of not any community but the entire country.
Right, absolutely. And there have also been questions raised about the Banaras Hindu University, where 60% quota is given to the Hindus. There are Christian schools and colleges, for example, St. Stephen's College, which gives minority quota to the Christians. So it is, like I said, it's just a technicality here. When you are being provided government grants and the government financially supports you, that was the initial the Act of Parliament. This was in 1920. But since then, like I said, there have been a lot of developments. There has been an amendment in the law, amendment in the constitution, and that has to be adhered to. Naveen Chaumal, what are your views over here? Do you think the government has, the Supreme Court has somehow, wriggled its way out of it? We have the Chief Justice of India, it was his last day, Chief Justice Chandrachud's last day, and he has handed over the baton to the next Chief Justice of India. And there is going to be now a bench that is going to be created of 3 judges. Again, a case that had been challenged in 1967 has seen a development, a progression in 2024. That is decades long of appeals being made to the courts. And how soon do you think a judgment could be passed by the 3-judge bench?
Priyaji, there are 2 aspects which I would like to deal with. Kindly bear with me. Firstly, I will reply to your question straight on, that yes, Supreme Court has very apparently tried to wriggle its way out of the situation, when ideally the Supreme Court should have, when there is a bench of 7 judges sitting together, they should have passed a conclusive order in this matter. Now they have thrown the ball back in the court of another bench of 3 judges. So that may take another long time. And this, yes, Firoz sir is also right. And they should have taken the decision. And why is Supreme Court shy of or scared of taking decision just because the issue involves the minority quota of the Muslim community? They should go by the rule book, they should go by the constitution, and what are the laws which are wrong, they could have criticized. And Supreme Court is otherwise having all the courage to even rip apart Baba Ramdev. That time they don't have any what you say, regard for decency or morality. But now in such cases where decision is required, since 67 they have kept it pending, and now today again they have given it a new start. So this is not acceptable from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, absolutely.
The public is vocal
You're
enough.
absolutely right.
Yes.
I exactly am mirroring your sentiment over here. It has taken 57 long years.
One more aspect. I would also like to put my views that we cannot compare this issue of minority status to the Aligarh Muslim University with the issue of quota to our backward class brethren, because see, there was a heavy discussion by the Constituent Assembly in 1947, where it was headed by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. He was a great visionary, not just a thinker of that time, but he was thinking ahead of his times. So the premise of our constitution, in fact our nation is surviving because of a very beautiful and very thoughtful constitution drafted, taking care of all sections of the society.
Yes,
so
absolutely, it is. But then again, you know, when you have your scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBC quotas that are at this point in time being capped at 50%. And then there are talks about a caste census that the Congress wants to have across the country, talks of how those reservations of 50% need to increase further. The question arises is what happens to the students, to the IAS aspirants, to the IFS aspirants who have been putting in the hard work, who have been burning the midnight oil, who are the people with their credibility, are supposed to get all these jobs, supposed to get into prestigious institutions, but are left wanting because there is quota that allows for a less intelligent, a less credible, a less qualified individual to then be given that seat. On that note, I am out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. And we are getting some information over here that the Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar has strongly condemned undignified remarks that were made against women leaders during the election campaign and urged officials to take timely and stern action against such derogatory remarks by the candidates. There have been derogatory remarks that have been made against women, and the Chief Election Commissioner has come out and reprimanded political parties. Nitish Jha on the telecast with me. Nitish, which political party and which leader from which political party made this unsavory comment against women?
जी बिल्कुल मेघा, देखिए जिस तरह से बीते दिनों शिवसेना यूबीटी के नेताओं के तरफ से लगातार बयानबाजी की गई और महिलाओं को लेकर खासतौर पर मुंबा देवी की जो मुंबा देवी से जो उम्मीदवार है शिवसेना की शाइना एनसी, उनको लेकर जो है लगातार बयान दिए गए, जहां अरविंद सावंत ने उन्हें इम्पोर्टेंट माल कह के संबोधित किया, जिसके बाद लगातार जो उनकी आलोचना भी हुई, उनके ऊपर एफआईआर दर्ज की गई और उसके बाद संजय राउत के भाई की तरफ से भी जो है विनायक राउत की तरफ से भी कुछ बयानबाजी हुई। इन सब के ऊपर आज जब इलेक्शन कमीशन रिव्यू मीटिंग कर रहा था, ऑनलाइन मीटिंग था, उस मीटिंग में जो है राजीव कुमार चुनाव आयोग के प्रमुख है, आयुक्त है, और उनके साथ ज्ञानेश कुमार और बाकी अन्य लोग जो है वो मौजूद थे और साथ ही साथ ऑफिशियल्स, पुलिस कमिश्नर के साथ पुलिस ऑफिसर्स जो है वो मौजूद थे, रिटर्निंग ऑफिसर्स और सारे तमाम चुनाव आयोग के जो कर्मचारी थे वो मौजूद थे। तब उस समय उन्होंने कहा कि इस तरह की बयानबाजी, जो कि पहले भी इस तरह की बयानबाजी से बचने के लिए जो है नेताओं को और उम्मीदवारों को कहा गया था, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को कहा गया था कि किसी भी तरह की ऐसी स्टेटमेंट से बचे जहां पर महिलाओं का सम्मान ना किया जाए, ऐसी स्टेटमेंट ना दी जाए और साथ ही साथ किसी को लेकर पर्सनल रिमार्क्स जो है वो ना दिए जाए। और ऐसे में जो है शिवसेना यूबीटी के नेता अरविंद सावंत की तरफ से जो है ऐसा बयान सामने आया था, जिसके बाद आज राजीव कुमार ने मीटिंग में भी कहा है कि इन सारी चीजों को लेकर ऑफिशियल्स जो है वो जल्द से जल्द कार्रवाई करे। इस तरह की बयान अगर कोई देता है तो उस पर जो है जल्द से जल्द जिस तरह के बयान है उस तरह की कार्रवाई उन पर होनी चाहिए। जी मेघा।
Okay, all right. On that note, I thank you for giving me those updates. There is more information pouring in. There were 2 terrorists that have been killed in Sopore, encountered in Jammu and Kashmir. Joint forces have recovered arms and ammunition from these 2 terrorists. Visuals on your screens of those arms and ammunition that have been recovered by the joint forces after the search operations that were initiated. Ajay Jandal on the telecast with me. Ajay, give us more information. 2 more terrorists have been neutralized now.
Yes, Megha, it's a big success for the forces as they have, successfully neutralized 2 terrorists in Soper's encounter, and warlike stores has been recovered from the spot. According to information, 2 days back, security forces got this specific input about the presence of these terrorists in that area, and immediately operation was done. Jammu Kashmir Police, Army, and CRP, they cordoned off that area, and during that search and record, and terrorists those who were hiding in a house, they opened fire, and that led to the encounter. And after 2 days long encounter, 2 bodies of the terrorists have been recovered, and warlike store like ammunition, AK series rifles, hand grenades, pistols, and other material has been recovered from the spot. That indicates that these terrorists basically were planning to carry out major attack in the Soper, but fortunately, forces they got specific input, and now both the terrorists have been gunned down by the forces.
Right, absolutely. We are also getting information with regards to this arms and ammunitions. There are these rifles, there are these grenades that have been found. Ajay, give us information now. If you could tell us what all entails these number of arms and ammunitions, the visuals of which are now visible on our screens. All right, on that note, I'll slip into a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.